On the morning of March 2nd, 1968, a company of the US 25th Infantry Division walks into an ambush on a road outside the village of Hoc Mon, northwest of Saigon. In roughly 8 minutes, 48 Americans are dead. A rifle company that started the day around 90 men strong is destroyed before it can organize any real defense, cut down on an open road while the rest of its battalion is close enough to hear the firing and unable to reach it for hours. It is one of the worst single losses any American company suffers in the entire Vietnam War, and it comes weeks after the Great Tet Offensive has already, by every official measure, been beaten. How a veteran division loses 48 men in 8 minutes in a war it is supposedly winning is the story of what the fighting around Saigon had really become. The company belonged to the 4th Battalion, 9th Infantry Regiment, part of the 25th Infantry Division. The men called themselves Manchus, and the name was not a marketing invention. The 9th Infantry earned it in 1900 during the Boxer Rebellion, when the regiment fought its way through China toward Peking. At the Battle of Tientsin, the regimental commander, Colonel Emerson Liscombe, was shot down carrying the colors, and as he fell, he passed the flag along with the order that became the regimental motto, "Keep up the fire." The Manchus carried that lineage through the Philippines, 2 World Wars, and Korea, where they fought at Heartbreak Ridge and Porkchop Hill. By the time the 4th Battalion reaches Vietnam in 1966, it is one of the oldest and most decorated infantry organizations in the US Army, which is worth noting mainly because pedigree offers no protection against the tactical problem the battalion is about to face. The division these Manchus belong to is the 25th, known as Tropic Lightning, headquartered at Cu Chi, roughly 25 miles northwest of Saigon. Cu Chi is a revealing place to build a base because it sits directly on top of one of the largest Viet Cong tunnel systems in the country. The division is, quite literally, garrisoning the roof of its own enemy, a fact that captures the central frustration of the American position. The Americans control the surface, move where they like, and bring overwhelming firepower to bear wherever they find a fight. What they cannot do is control what lies underneath, or behind, or among the population. From Cu Chi, the division is responsible for some of the hardest ground of the war, including the Iron Triangle, the Hobo Woods, and a stretch of Highway 1 running down from the Cambodian border toward the capital. That highway is one of the principal invasion corridors into Saigon, which makes holding the belt of country around it a permanent obligation rather than a temporary mission. That obligation is why the 25th is at the center of the Tet fighting when the offensive erupts on the 31st of January. The 1st Division unit to react is a mechanized cavalry troop, Troop C of the 3rd Squadron, 4th Cavalry, which races down Highway 1 from Cu Chi toward Tan Son Nhut. It had been sitting at Cu Chi with 1 platoon already securing the Hoc Mon Bridge, a crossing that will feature again in this story, and as it drives south, it runs directly into a second wave of enemy battalions hidden in the villages outside the perimeter. The lead vehicles are hit with rockets, the column is pinned, and the troop takes 12 men killed and around 50 wounded. It holds. The enemy comes close to overrunning Tan Son Nhut and does not, in part because 1 cavalry troop absorbs a brutal beating to keep the second wave off the runways. Across the first 15 days of the offensive, the division reports killing more than 1,000 Viet Cong in the hamlets ringing the capital. On paper, this is a triumph. On the ground, the more useful lesson is that the country north and west of Saigon is saturated with an enemy who can still mass quickly and fight hard from concealment even after his main effort has failed. That lesson sets up the operation that leads to the ambush. Weeks after the main Tet attacks are defeated, Tan Son Nhut is still being hit by rocket fire from sites hidden in the belt of villages and paddies north and northwest of the airfield. The attacks are not trivial. 1 strike destroys 6 aircraft and damages more than 30 others, and a series of rocket and mortar attacks over these weeks kills several people and wounds more than 150, including a hit on the civilian air terminal. For the arrival point of much of the manpower and material flowing into the war, this is an intolerable and continuing wound. The weapon behind it is the 122mm rocket, and its virtues from the enemy's point of view are precisely what make it so hard to stop. It is simple, mobile, and needs almost nothing in the way of a firing position. A crew can lay the rocket on a bamboo frame or a low dirt berm, aim it by eye toward the base, fire, and disappear into the population before the round even lands. There is no gun to locate, no crew to fix in place, no permanent battery to bomb. Counter-battery fire, the standard artillery answer to enemy shelling, is nearly useless against an enemy who never stays where he fired. This is the recurring shape of the whole war in miniature. American technological advantages assume a target that holds still, and the enemy's central skill is refusing to be that target. The only reliable answer is to put infantry on the ground where the launch sites are suspected to be and clear the area on foot, hamlet by hamlet and tree line by tree line. That is slow, dangerous, manpower-intensive work, and it looks far tidier on a division briefing map than it does at the level of the individual rifle company. To take on that work, the Manchus first have to move. On the 22nd of February, the battalion closes down Khatum, a forward base it had been holding near the Cambodian border. After a brief stop at Tai Ninh to refit, it moves south, and by the 25th of February, it has established itself north of Tan Son Nhut, with orders to find and destroy the rocket sites tormenting the airbase. This is not garrison duty. The area is thick with an enemy who has every incentive to protect his firing positions, and the ground favors the defender at every turn. The approaches to the hamlets are laced with tree lines, irrigation ditches, dikes, and dense vegetation, all of it offering concealment to anyone willing to lie still and wait, which is a skill the enemy has spent years perfecting. The last week of February gives the battalion a preview of what the ground holds. The fighting in the Hoc Mon area during those days is heavy and continuous, drawing in cavalry, the division's wolfhound infantry battalions, and mechanized units, and the Manchus are bleeding before March 2nd ever arrives. On the 27th of February, the battalion loses 4 men killed, among them its executive officer, Major Bill Roosh. An executive officer is the second in command of a battalion, and losing one is not a routine casualty. It is the kind of loss that degrades a unit's ability to plan and coordinate, and it lands only days before the battalion will need every ounce of coordination it can find. So the operational picture comes together like this. A veteran infantry battalion, worn by a month of near-continuous action and short one of its senior officers, is pushing through a belt of hostile villages north of Tan Son Nhut in early March 1968, hunting mobile rocket teams across terrain built for ambush. American intelligence knows the enemy is present and dangerous. What it does not know, and what no one on the ground can know with any precision, is exactly where he has chosen to make his stand, or in what strength. That gap between what is estimated and what is real runs through the whole of the fighting around Saigon. The division can report enemy dead by the thousand and still not be able to say which tree line, on a given morning, holds a waiting battalion. The morning of March 2nd, 1968, finds the battalion operating in Gia Dinh province, near a bridge on Route 248 by the small hamlet of Quaswan, roughly 8.5 miles northwest of Saigon and about 4 miles north of Tan Son Nhut. Charlie Company, the battalion's C Company, is moving to link up with the rest of the battalion for a ground assault on an area where contact had been made before. It numbers around 92 men. In the effort to catch up with the other companies, Charlie Company is moving fast along the road, strung out in column, and it is moving without flank security. That single detail is the hinge on which the entire day turns. Flank security means pushing men out to the sides of a moving column, off the road and into the tree lines, to screen the main body against exactly the threat that is waiting. It slows a unit down considerably, which is why a company in a hurry is tempted to skip it. The doctrine exists because a column moving along a road without flankers presents its entire length to anyone lying in the vegetation alongside that road. The men of Charlie Company are experienced soldiers, and they understand the risk. The pressure to close the distance and rejoin the battalion wins out, and the company pushes on in column. This is not stupidity. It is the ordinary arithmetic of a tired unit under time pressure. and it is precisely the arithmetic the enemy has learned to exploit. The enemy is waiting in prepared positions along that road, concealed and dug in what is estimated as a reinforced company and may be considerably larger. Some accounts describe the force in the general area as a battalion-sized element. When Charlie Company draws abreast of the ambush, the enemy opens fire along the entire length of the column at once. This is not a meeting engagement that builds over time. It is a sprung trap, and it reflects the Viet Cong's signature tactic, the carefully prepared ambush that opens at point-blank range and is largely finished before the target can organize any response. The fire comes from small arms, automatic weapons, and command-detonated claymore mines, the enemy's copies of the American directional mine, which throws a lethal spray of steel across a wide arc. Mortars and rocket-propelled grenades come in on top of the small arms fire. Because the company is in column on open ground, with no flankers to absorb or locate the opening volley, there is no cushion between the men and the killing zone. The volume of fire in the first moments is overwhelming, and it is aimed with the specific intent the Viet Cong bring to these engagements to knock out the leaders and the radios before the Americans can reach for the firepower that would otherwise save them. The result is best left to the numbers, because the numbers carry the weight without any need to embellish. Within roughly 8 minutes, 48 men of Charlie Company are dead or dying. Some accounts place the figure at 49, a discrepancy that reflects the confusion of the day, men who died of wounds shortly after, and the difficulty of counting bodies under fire. Official figures settle on 48 killed. Alongside the dead, between 24 and 28 men are wounded. A company that entered the morning around 92 strong has, in the span of 8 minutes, effectively ceased to exist as a functioning unit, with more than 3/4 of its strength down. This ranks among the worst single encounter losses any American company suffers in the entire Vietnam War, and it is inflicted in less time than it takes to eat a meal. In that opening burst, the machinery a company relies on to defend itself comes apart. Communication with the battalion is lost. The company commander is hit. Numerous other members of the company become casualties in the first moments, which means the men who would normally organize a defense, the officers and senior sergeants, are among the first to fall. What remains is a scattered, pinned, disorganized collection of survivors returning fire from whatever cover the roadside offers, while the wounded lie exposed in the open. The ambush has done exactly what it was designed to do, which is to remove the American ability to fight as a coordinated unit before that ability can be used. The rest of the battalion is close, but close is not the same as able to help. When Charlie Company is hit, the other companies Alpha, Bravo, and Delta move to reinforce, and they cannot get through for much of the day. Enemy rear guard elements, including snipers positioned for this exact purpose, hold off the relief forces and keep them from reaching the besieged company for hours. Gunships, artillery, and airstrikes are brought to bear, and here the central contradiction of the day comes into focus. Supporting fire is only useful if it can be placed where it hurts the enemy without killing the friendly wounded, and at Quaswan the two are tangled together. The survivors and their attackers are intermingled at close range, which means much of the American firepower advantage, the artillery and gunships that normally decide these fights, cannot be fully used without endangering the very men it is meant to save. This is not a rare accident. By 1968, something like 15 to 20% of US casualties come from friendly fire, a direct consequence of an enemy who deliberately closes to a range where American firepower becomes as dangerous to the Americans as to him. Air power and artillery can work the flanks and the escape routes, but the core of the killing zone is too close for comfort. Delta Company takes casualties of its own in the effort to fight through. A reminder that the cost is not confined to the company that walked into the trap. It is late in the day before the relief forces break through, and the surviving wounded can be reached and evacuated. By then, the arithmetic of the morning is fixed, and there is a grim postscript that captures its scale. At the division base at Cu Chi, the medical and graves registration personnel receive the dead. One who was there recalls roughly 50 killed in action arriving from this ambush, a batch of casualties so large that in his memory of the whole war, only the 10-day Battle of Hamburger Hill the following year would surpass it. Set against those losses, the enemy's own reported dead for the day come to roughly 20. The asymmetry is worth sitting with because it inverts what the Americans had come to expect. Across the wider Tet fighting around Saigon, superior firepower generally produced a lopsided exchange in the Americans' favor, and the division reported enemy dead in the thousands. At Quaswan, the ratio ran the other way, more than 2 American dead for every enemy killed. The ambush is a compact demonstration of what those larger figures tend to obscure, that a prepared enemy choosing the time and place could still inflict grievous losses on a US unit caught in the open, and that firepower cannot rescue a company already shattered in the first volley. For their conduct in those minutes, several Manchus are recognized with the highest decorations the army can bestow. The most significant goes to Specialist 4 Nicholas Coutinho, a 23-year-old machine gunner from Florida who had joined Charlie Company as a replacement in September of 1967. When the company is pinned down and disorganized and its leaders are falling, Coutinho moves to the front with his machine gun and begins firing on the charging enemy, deliberately drawing fire onto himself to take the pressure off the rest of the company. He is seriously wounded in the leg early on. As the fire intensifies and roughly half the company is killed or wounded, he refuses to leave his gun. When his weapon is disabled, he crawls through enemy fire to reach another machine gun so he can keep covering the wounded being treated behind him. He holds that position, refuses assistance, and keeps firing until he is mortally wounded. He is credited with killing 15 of the enemy and saving the lives of at least 9 of his fellow soldiers. For this, he receives the Medal of Honor, presented to his family by President Nixon at the White House on the 7th of April 1970. His medal is today held by an American Legion post in La Belle, Florida, the only known post entrusted with a Medal of Honor. Coutinho is one of 3 Manchus of the 4th Battalion to earn the Medal of Honor across the regiment's Vietnam service, and it says something about the character of the unit's war that all 3 are awarded posthumously. In this battalion, the nation's highest honor came only at the cost of the recipient's life. The Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second highest award for valor, ranking just below the Medal of Honor, is awarded for the Quaswan action as well. Among its recipients is Aristides Sosa, a soldier attached to the operation from the 65th Engineer Battalion, who is killed in the fighting and posthumously promoted to corporal and awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. His place on the casualty list is a reminder that the men who died at Quaswan were not all riflemen of Charlie Company. The dead include combat engineers, medics from the battalion's headquarters company, a trooper from the 11th Armored Cavalry, and an artillery sergeant, the ordinary mixture of attachments and supporting soldiers that moves with any infantry operation and shares its fate. Beyond the Medal of Honor and the Distinguished Service Cross, the fighting on the road produces a number of Silver Stars, the 3rd highest decoration for valor, awarded to men of the battalion for gallantry in holding the killing zone and reaching the wounded. The pattern of decorations tells its own analytical story about the shape of the engagement. When a company loses its commander and its communications in the opening seconds, the valor that follows is almost entirely improvised, the courage of individuals and small groups acting on their own judgment, covering the wounded, manning weapons whose crews are dead, and buying time for an evacuation that will not come until the day is nearly over. These medals are, in a sense, a measure of how completely the ambush stripped away the coordinated defense the company was supposed to mount. The Manchus do not withdraw after March 2nd. Alpha, Bravo, and Delta companies keep operating in the area around Quaswan in the days that follow, taking further casualties until the battalion finally leaves the area on the 11th of March. In the strictly operational sense, the mission produces results. Rocket sites in the belt north of Tan Son Nhut are located and destroyed, and a communist force that had been firing on the airbase is engaged and badly hurt over the course of the fighting. Measured against the stated objective, protecting the airbase by clearing the launch areas, the operation can be filed as an accomplishment, and across the full sweep, the tally of enemy dead may even come out in the division's favor. That accounting sits uneasily against the cost, and the discomfort is the point. The destruction of Charlie Company is the product of a decision made under pressure and understandable in the moment to move fast along a road without flank security in terrain that punishes exactly that choice. The larger operation that put the battalion on that road is itself a response to a threat, the rocketing of Tan Son Nhut, that no amount of infantry sweeping can permanently solve because the weapons are mobile and the enemy can always fire from somewhere else the following week. Quaswan belongs to a wider pattern that runs through the whole of 1968 around Saigon. An enemy decisively defeated in open battle, unable to hold ground or seize cities, remains fully capable of inflicting sudden and grievous losses on American units drawn into the endless work of clearing the belt of hamlets around the capital. By the official reckoning, Tet is an American victory and the enemy is broken. On the road outside Quaswan, that reckoning has very little to say. The events here left a mark on the Manchus that outlasted the war. And decades later, the battalion survivors would still gather to remember the men lost at Quaswan, speaking the name of that small hamlet on Route 248 the way soldiers speak of the places that cost them the most. 48 men died there in about 8 minutes, on a mission to find rocket sites in a war the official figures insisted had already been won that winter. The gap between those figures and that road is where the real history of 1968 was actually written, and no report ever managed to close it.